Good evening, folks. This is the public information meeting for Longleaf Trace. We'll get started in just a minute. Great. I think we have enough of the development team here. So we have the panelists or the development team, and my name is Catherine Shore. I'm joined by my colleague Taz Lagu on the planning team, and we have about 10 attendees. We'll go through a presentation from the development team, and then we'll have an opportunity for questions from the folks who are viewing. When we get to the question portion of the evening, we'll ask that folks use the raise hand feature of Zoom, and we'll be able to bring you in as a panelist, promote you as a panelist, be able to share your question, and then we'll be able to bring the next person in, kind of a rotating panelist option. So I'll give the development team an opportunity to introduce themselves as appropriate and share their presentation.
Dustin, you want to start us off?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dustin Mills. I'm the president of Taft Mills Group. We are the developer along with our partner Community Home Trust, who will also introduce themselves tonight. Excited to give you an overview of the development that we are proposing, and happy to answer any questions after our presentation. Nate?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Nate Broman, folks. I'm Vice President of Development for Taft Mills Group, serving as project lead for us on this project, and I'll turn it over to Kimberly.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Kimberly Sanchez, Executive Director of Community Home Trust, the co-developer in this partnership, and we are a nonprofit organization primarily located in Orange County, and we help people find affordable homes, ownership and rental.
Great. Let's see. You want to go over to Neil?
Sure. My name is Neil Allen. I'm the Vice President of Unity Engineering Landscape Architecture out of Durham, North Carolina, and we are helping with some of the stormwater designs and some of the other layout design aspects related to the project.
Want to go, Aaron?
Hutchins, Assistant Vice President, also with Unity.
And Tristan's not on camera, so Tristan, if you were there and want to introduce yourself, please.
Hey, sorry. Tristan Williams with Taft Mills Group, assisting in the project development through the application process and potential due diligence.
All right. Catherine, should I kick off the presentation at this point?
Please.
All right. All right. Are you seeing the full presentation mode or the notes?
I can see it in presentation mode now.
Okay. So good evening again, everyone. Nate Broman, folks, with Taft Mills Group. We have a fairly brief presentation for you tonight. We want to give you a quick high-level overview of our development team, and then a high-level overview of the proposed Longleaf Trace affordable senior housing community here on Legion Road in Chapel Hill. And this, as we've mentioned, is a partnership between our company and Community Home Trust, who is a longtime Chapel Hill nonprofit, trusted affordable housing developer and provider in the community. We will be brief, though. We want to leave plenty of time to hear from you and to answer questions. So I'll go into our overview. We are the Taft Mills Group. We specialize in affordable housing development, in particular low-income housing tax credit development. The principals of our company, Dustin Mills and CJ Tyree, have developed over 100 affordable communities with over 5,000 affordable units being created. We do focus in North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, Maryland, and Ohio. And because of our work, Affordable Housing Finance magazine has ranked us as a top 35 affordable housing developer in the country. And this will be our second project in Chapel Hill. We were selected a few years ago by the town as their development partner to develop affordable housing on town-owned land on J Street. And that also was a partnership with Community Home Trust. And we were excited. This past summer, we received the low-income housing tax credits for that project from the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency. And so I'll turn over to Kimberly to do a brief overview of the Home Trust.
Sure, thanks, Nate. So Community Home Trust, as I said, is a affordable housing organization based in Orange County. We have been in the community for 30 years. And so we have primarily been a homeownership organization until about 7 years ago, we became invested in rental, because there are numerous ways that somebody can afford to live. And sometimes that's homeownership and sometimes that's rental. And we have found that this relationship with Taft Mills helps us get to our goal and our mission, which is to provide this community with affordable housing options. But we don't have to necessarily spend all of the time and the expertise that we don't have to actually build it. So we are grateful to be able to be a partner in these developments. Community Home Trust's role as co-developer, we are part of the entire process, but we are also sort of the liaison for the community. So as this project continues to develop, the Community Home Trust has a webpage that has lots of information about the project, FAQs about the project, in order to help the community understand or have a way to talk a little bit more about what it is that may be concerning, they may be excited about, but that's our role. And as the property is developed, once it is developed, we will be working with the residents to really help them with things that may be important to them and create community at the actual building. So very excited about that.
This slide shows you a brief overview of projects that are either underway or have been recently completed in North Carolina. Just to give you a feel for the types of projects that we do and the locations. You can see a lot of our work expands kind of throughout North Carolina. Now to turn our attention to the project that we're here to talk about tonight, you can see on this slide in the yellow highlighted area is the site that we are proposing to do our development project on. It's on Legion Road, at 1708 Legion Road. It's about 3¼ acres, and in the blue lines is with the town seal, that's the town's property, which is next to ours. That's where the future town park is proposed to be located. So we think this is an absolutely fabulous site for affordable housing. Not only will there be a park for future residents, but there is existing sidewalk, there are bike lanes, there's on-site access essentially to public transit. And it's also walkable to many amenities like grocery store shopping, restaurants, doctor's offices, many things that together make this a great opportunity to provide affordable senior housing here in town. Looking at what we have submitted for our development proposal, so the site plan calls for about 48 affordable units, age restricted to people 55 years of age and older, and who have an income less than 60% of the area median income, or 60% AMI and below. So for a household of 2, that would be under $50,000 would be eligible. Households making that would be eligible to live here. We are proposing a 3-story residential building with a mix of 1 and 2 bedroom units. Looking around the area, and what we're proposing here is significantly less dense than the new multifamily housing developments that are in close proximity to the site, but it is what we're proposing is consistent with the town's future land use map as far as project type, height, density, and use. A few things that we wanted to note in the site plan and the design of the plan. We have placed the development area in a location to try to maximize buffers between our site and neighbors, and to make it a fairly compact development to maintain as much tree canopy as possible. You can see on the bottom of the site, there's about a 200-foot tree buffer between the part of the site that we're proposing to build on and the neighbors over here on Clover. In addition to that, on the southern part of the site next to the Turnberry, we are proposing to have a privacy fence along, as well as a natural buffer that will extend all across this line to try to create privacy for the neighbors here. So all in all, we're preserving about 1/3 of the site, leaving it undisturbed, but also still finding ways to incorporate outdoor recreation area in our site plan, as well as many amenities for the future residents, to include a community building, which would be inside the building area, some outdoor exercise facility, on-site property management. We'll have several different types of rooms, multi-purpose rooms, fitness and business centers, and seating and resident activity areas throughout the development. To give you a sense of what that would look like, here are pictures of some of our existing projects. So you can see the lobby area, which I personally think is the quite nice and lovely lobby area. You can also see exercise equipment, kind of to give you a feel for what we anticipate some of the outdoor recreation area to look like. Here's a picture of one of our residents using one of the outdoor recreation equipment. Also, we typically have things like library rooms, seating rooms, and in the bottom left-hand corner is one of our projects that has community gardens for our residents, where there are several raised beds for residents to have their own little garden. And then to give you a feel for what the buildings would actually look like, you can see here a completed project in Wake Forest, North Carolina. This is a 68-unit project, also for senior housing. So it's 68 units, so it's bigger than what we are proposing on the Chapel Hill site, but this gives you a feel for the building type that we have in mind. Also, one more project to highlight is the Parkside Commons. This is also a senior housing development. Help you get a feel for the type of building. This one is much larger than we're proposing for the Chapel Hill site, but it was also awarded an award of excellence from the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency several years ago, and has been a successful project for us. So that is the highlights. We wanted to make it pretty brief so that we have plenty of time to hear from you all and answer any questions. So I'll stop sharing and turn it over to you, Catherine.
Thanks, Nate. So for the question and answer portion of our information meeting this evening, just want to set expectations that we do have want to be respectful of your time, and we will end our meeting at 6 o'clock. So we have the next bit of time, assuming that the conversation will take that amount of time. For you to ask questions of the development team, please raise your hand using the raise hand feature in Zoom. And I'll just select folks based on the order that I see them raised. And the team will do their best to answer your questions. So the first person I see is Margaret. I'm going to bring you in to allow you to promote you to panelist, and then I will you'll have an opportunity to ask your question. Hi, Margaret.
All right. Can you hear me now?
We can.
Okay, great. Is the town of Chapel Hill planning to build any more affordable housing on the Legion site, or has it always been designated as a senior living community? The reason I ask, I'm the mother of a 26-year-old son with autism, and we are desperately trying to find affordable housing for him, either rental or purchase. We are signed up with Community Home Trust. He is absolutely priced out of the market. I mean, he receives public benefits, is on the innovations waiver. It's just we're in a really tough spot. My husband and I are getting older. We would like to retire and downsize, but we can't make any move until we have John situated in, his lifetime home. So anyway, thoughts, comments?
I think if I understood your question correctly, it was about the
Senior
affordable-
designation. Yeah.
The senior designation. Sure.
Has it always been a senior designation development?
So the property that this developer is proposing for senior housing is on Legion Road, but separate from the town's property.
Okay.
So that's a separate conversation and separate permit process that I don't know what the age conversation is around that, and if it's but the property for Longleaf Trace, they are pursuing the age restriction.
Okay. All right. So follow-up question is, I know that the town of Chapel Hill has recently, I think, awarded the development contract for low-income housing on the Legion property.
Mm-hmm.
Who do I need to contact to get more information about that?
So it's my understanding that the developer for that project what is DHIC based in Raleigh. So maybe contacting them would be a good start. Kimberly, do you have any?
No, that's right. I would say you could contact DHIC. Also, the other project that we are building in conjunction with Taft Mills at J Street, which is our Tanyard Branch Trace, that is not income restricted. So that would be an opportunity for you as well, because that's the same thing, below 60%. So there will be 30% units, 50% units, and 60% units that I'm sure with a fixed income, there could be some real possibilities for your son to live there. CHT owns the landings at Winmore, which is another project, and many of our tenants are long-term residents there as well for the affordability purposes. But there will be some non-age restricted housing for the DHIC project as well off Legion Road.
Great, thank you.
Welcome.
I
Thanks,
appreciate it.
Margaret. So I will move you back to the attendee and bring in Peter.
Is my microphone live now?
Mm-hmm. We can hear you.
Several of us, by the way, I would like to compliment the developers on a proposal that is just so much superior to the one that was floated about 10 years ago when Mr. Lindquist proposed to put 24 townhomes on the property, including 4 on the far side of the stream, closely abutting the meadows. My wife and I live at the 39 Clover, which is one of the houses actually shown. Now, where we are direct neighbors, both of this plot and of the Legion property. We took your invitation to email questions. Have these been considered? Are you planning to read them, or should I do that? Ms. Shore?
I'm sorry.
What happened? At least 2 landowners, we and our neighbor at 37, who's not able to attend tonight, sent written questions to your email as requested in the little postcard. Haven't heard any mention of them. Were you planning to work them in, or should?
So
Oh,
those were forwarded to the development team. They are aware, and you're welcome to
but they were,
bring them up.
that they were, okay.
I do have them in front of me right now. If there's, so we could address some of the answers if you want, or if you'd like me to read them out, I'm happy to. The first question was, how does the Longleaf Trace project propose to deal with sanitary sewer in the face of 5% grade up to the street? So we would be definitely proposing to connect our sewer out to Legion Road. We're working with OWASA right now to talk about what the depth of that sanitary sewer is up front. Of course, we would like to get into that sewer through a gravity connection. But if that's unavailable, then we'll have to look at possibly pumping up to the street. So that's the first question. The second question was, how does the Longleaf Trace project propose to handle stormwater runoff from the parking and building hard surfaces without overloading the stream? We are going to propose an underground detention system to be below the parking lot. It will meet all the requirements of the Chapel Hill Stormwater Ordinance for detention and peak flow requirements. Let's see, do you have any additional questions about that one?
Is that going to keep the stream from spreading to 20 feet wide, which it normally does when there's a heavy rainstorm?
So currently the stream channel comes primarily from the pond that's upstream. Most of the drainage from the street comes out from a storm pipe that comes out near Legion Road and runs down through that property. The property that we have will be fully contained within this stormwater control measure that we're proposing. There's nothing we can do in stream for what's currently coming through, but we will definitely be controlling and reducing or matching what's in the stream channel currently.
That sounds encouraging. The pedestrian path, is that intended to be paved?
So the pedestrian path, actually, we have talked about that, and one of the changes that we'd like to make is we're talking about removing the pedestrian path from the stream buffer, just because we think we have worked with the town to come up with a better way to make a connection to the adjacent property on the other side of the stream. And I'm an environmental engineer, so we like to not disturb stream buffers and channels where we can avoid it. So we've decided to remove that from the proposal, so we won't be doing that.
That's a big improvement and also keeps you out of the crosshairs of 3 or 4 regulatory agencies.
Agreed.
You have the plot that we saw online shows parking for 48 parking spaces for 48 vehicles. What has been in your experience is the average number of vehicles per apartment?
I'm gonna let Dustin or
Yeah.
Nate talk about.
Yeah, thank you. I'll take that one. Good question, and one that we regularly receive. The proposed 48 units, we have to meet parking requirements often of the municipality as well as the funding agency that provides us with the loan, the dollars to develop the property. And it is most often we see a 1-to-1 ratio on age restricted property. So 48 units would mean 48 individual parking spaces. But to answer your question, we have done some visual aerial summaries of multiple age restricted properties, ours and others. And the answer is about 56% when it is a 1-to-1 ratio is used on a regular basis. So we'll see out of 48 units, 48 spaces, we might see just a little over 25, 26 spaces regularly utilized. And so it is a delicate balance with us because we want to minimize impervious areas. We also want to make sure that we don't overpark it, and we don't want to make sure that we underpark it. So what I can tell you is that our benchmark is 1 per unit, but we will work closely with the municipality to determine just how many units, how many spaces they will require. And it is somewhere most likely between 48 and definitely more than 24.
A lot of people aged 55 are still working. And if they're unable to get to work by the D bus that runs up and down Legion Road, they're going to need the car. So if you do these surveys in the day, you're not going to capture the cars that have gone off to work. So
right. That's a good point. And when we did our surveys, we thought that same thing as well. And so we did it at 7:30 a.m., 12 o'clock, and 7 p.m. were kind of when we fly the drones over the property. And it was a very elementary method for doing our research. We basically flew a drone over it those 3 times at each property and counted cars. So it's our experience that, it is not uncommon to drive through the community at various times and see spaces available. So, but we also want to be, considerate of our neighbors in the sense that we don't want to underpark it and have issues with them trying to park elsewhere. So we are very sensitive to that, and I can assure you that we will be paying close attention to what the municipality requires, our funding agency requires, and we as owners require.
if the project is expanded from 48 units to 60, where do the other 12 go? Up? 4th story?
Yes, that would be, in my opinion, as far as a building footprint, because this, with us wanting to preserve 1/3 of the site, the only way to increase the units would be to go up. But when you go up, we are already pushing our buildable footprint with the parking that we have now. So there's nothing that prevents a building from having a 4th story be built on it, but I can tell you that it causes some issues at the ground level with the associated parking. And our goal, I can tell you right now, is 48 units. We don't, we could have done the thing where we come in and, propose a lot and then, pare them back down, but 48 is where we feel like we can fit a nice 3-story building that's consistent with the surrounding multifamily uses, actually that's, smaller and shorter in height. But I can tell you that 48 is our goal.
Or will you engineer the building to be able to take the weight of the 4th floor?
Jonathan, who is our architect, I'm going to ask you to answer after my response, but I can tell you that as a developer owner, we own thousands of units. We've never done that once. So we never build with the anticipation of adding like a fourth floor, for example, if that's what I think you're asking. And if I'm not understanding that question correctly, please correct me.
No, you understood it quite correctly. It runs up the building cost for the first 48.
Yeah, it does, and we don't anticipate ever adding on to that. Once and this is getting into the weeds, but once we develop a property like this, it is its own property owned by the own partnership that has lenders and investors and that sort of thing. It's almost, it's not impossible, but it's almost impossible for us to do something like that anyway. That would also require us to adjust parking, and it just would be it would be a major challenge. Jonathan, do you have anything to add as the architect?
Yeah, I don't have anything additional. I would say it's unlikely that would occur because of all those constraints you just outlined.
And I'm surprised that you even mentioned the number 60 in the proposal. Maybe it'll disappear.
We will note that concern. Thank you.
Yeah.
Peter, do you have any other questions or comments?
Isabel, do we have any? I think I heard her say no. Oh, yes, thank you.
Okay,
I
thank you
don't
very
want
much.
to monopolize the meeting.
Okay. So I don't see any other hands raised. Oh, here we go. Please use the raise hand feature. Peter, I'll ask, we'll do a little switcheroo. Mary?
Hello, gentlemen and ladies. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. So as the general manager of the only hotel that's on Novus Lane between the Service Road and Legion, when is the proposed groundbreaking going to commence? And is there going to be any road closures at any time so I can redirect my guests on another way to get here? I have a lot of people that come in for medical reasons that got to get to UNC. And if I need to reroute their travel, I would like to know that in advance and then give my guest events notice of what's happening.
Okay, I'll take that. That's a very good question. From a groundbreaking standpoint, a lot has to happen between now and that particular point. And if I walk through it just briefly, the timeline, we're going through the rezoning process. We have to complete a lot of due diligence and financing related hurdles and benchmarks. So at a bare minimum, we wouldn't even be submitting for like building permits to the city or to the town of Chapel Hill until sometime in late 2025. And then there will be a building phase that's probably going to last between 12 to 14 months. And from time to time, there are short-term closures of lanes. It's very rare that we have a full road closure. And when we do have a lane closure, we have monitored traffic, individuals monitoring traffic so that you can, I'm sure you've run into one of those before where you have kind of a stop and go. So at best, it would be an inconvenience. It certainly wouldn't prevent guests from making it to your hotel. And the first time that you would incur anything remotely similar to that would be plus 2 years. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. That's very helpful. It gives me pre-planning.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mary. Next we have Rex Mercer. Rex, you can unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can.
Two questions, and actually you've touched on both of them, but just to clarify, first on the density, I understand you're shooting for 48 units, but 60 was mentioned. And Dustin, I'm not sure I fully understood the reasons for going for 48 instead of 60. Can you talk about that a little more?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So there are a lot of considerations, not just, density or size of site, but we start out with the footprint and what we feel like we can develop in that footprint. And so when we were looking at this particular site, we spoke with a market analyst. He kind of confirmed that with us that age restricted, there was a good market for age restricted. And so when we started building that footprint up, you start at 1, then 2, then 3 stories, and that got us to 48 units. The age restricted building is a single building that presently, as proposed, has 3 stories. And so when you add the 4th story and get to 60 units, not only do you have to, go with the additional floor, additional elevator stop, all that good stuff, but you also have to park it. And if you look at the plan that we're proposing right now, just generally speaking, and we've done some internal parking counts, we are as pretty tight on the site as we speak at 48 units. And so while we probably would love to go to 60 units, it just I don't believe that it, for various factors or reasons, that it's possible at this particular point in time.
Okay, thanks. And one additional question about how the site will be designed so that it integrates with the town-owned property next door that's going to be a park and some housing, perhaps.
Right.
How will residents there be able to access that? How are you integrating with surrounding neighborhoods, particularly the new park?
Right. Jonathan, I'm gonna say a few words and then ask you to comment on interconnectivity or anything along those lines. But Rex, to answer your question, we have a very strong relationship with town staff through our activity and efforts at J Street. So we've been working with town staff for the past 4 years. So we have regular dialogue, and in fact, in this particular instance, we have regular conference calls to try to address any concerns that staff or anyone may have regarding this particular development. So I think the answer is regular conversations with staff, proper planning and coordination. We are familiar with the adjacent parcel and have done a lot of due diligence on that site and attempted to come up with a development that complements what DHIC will eventually develop on the property. So we're very familiar with what's proposed. We're used to structuring deals that can, complement one another versus, work against them. And so, and we have a good relationship with DHIC as well. So we're very close with the executive director, Yolanda Winstead there. And so we feel like we'll be good partners with one another. Most likely this development, if it's funded during the first round of funding, would start construction in advance of anything on the town-owned parcel. So there will be a lot of coordination that would have to happen in advance of that. But ultimately speaking, our goal is to be a good neighbor, and we have all, in my opinion, the contacts that we need to have to be able to coordinate, brainstorm, kind of look at different options and get the development that we believe would be the very best asset for this particular community. Jonathan, anything you want to add on that?
Not much. I'll just add that this is a unique site that's already very well connected to that parcel. We've got sidewalk connections, and anything we would do would only add to the unique connections that already exist. So
yeah. And one of the things that I will tag onto that from a density standpoint, the 60 versus 48, we also have a goal corporately to be a good neighbor. And while the property across the street is higher than 3 stories, we did have the parking constraints. So there were definitely some site constraints that went into our mindset of going to 48 units. But we also didn't want to, tower over adjacent parcels. And so we felt like we knew that we'd have engagement with the neighbors, and we knew we'd have to go through a public process for the zoning. So we felt like, in addition to being constrained by the layout of the site and the building footprint, that 48 felt right because we could contain those 48 or accommodate those 48 units in 3 stories. And we felt like that was much closer to the scale from a height standpoint than some other things that are in the general area. But it was, in addition to the technical reasons, it was also trying to be a good neighbor. Just like we mentioned, to the residents along Turnberry, we're, you know, doing a privacy fence along that property line to help, shield, you know, any thing that is going on our site from those particular residents.
Okay, thank you, Dustin.
Thanks,
I'd like to just note that the exciting part about this project is that it will connect to that new amazing park that the town is going to build. And for our purposes, for the community piece, like having the ability for our older residents to be able to access that is important to us. And so you'll see as we develop the plans and like move forward that there is really increased opportunity to access that park.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I'll reiterate what Nate said in his presentation to kind of tag on to what Kimberly just said. It's very rare that you find a site where you can walk to a grocery store, a restaurant, a bank. You can walk to what I believe is, and I'm confident is going to be a first-class public park. And you have direct access to public transportation. It checks every box that we have. With the exception of the stream, because those are tough when you develop anywhere near a stream. But as you can see, we have stayed out of that area and don't plan to disturb any of that area. So hope that answers your questions, Rex.
Yes, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Rex. I'll allow and bring in Diane. Hi, Diane.
Hello. I'd like to ask a question. Are you getting feedback from me first?
I am hearing some feedback.
I'll be right back.
Okay. Just give Diane a moment.
Okay, I'll try it now.
That's better.
Okay. I've heard the phrase amazing park from Ms. Sanchez and also from the Taft Mills group. Where do you think the park is going to be?
I can answer what I'm aware of, which is when we were looking at the site, the RFQ that was released by the town of Chapel Hill seeking affordable housing developers to help them develop the front portion of the site. And I don't know the exact percentages, but the front portion of the site doesn't go much deeper than what our particular site goes, I believe is the parcel that is reserved for affordable housing, and the balance of the parcel would be reserved for the park space.
Okay, that's not my understanding as a resident who lives near there and has been pro park for the entire Legion property ever since we've lived here, which has been 30 some years. My understanding is that most of the area that's flat of the Legion property, which also, if you look at your aerial picture that shows the pond, they want to drain the pond. They want to make it smaller. We don't know. We as citizens have not heard yet how much smaller, but that dam needs to be fixed. So there's going to be work on that first. And then the whole flat part where the current old building stands would be part of a very large number of housing units. That's what we understand. And that park is not at all amazing if most of the acreage that can be used that isn't RCD is used up on that DHIC proposal. And I don't know what I don't believe it's been made public how much of the land DHIC is using. I mean, we're all guessing, but it's most of that flat part, which far exceeds the back of what your development would, well, I'm calling it the back. You back up to the meadows, but the flat part I'm talking about on the Legion property goes alongside the meadows, past the meadow.
Mhm. So Diane, since your question seems a little not directly tied to the redevelopment of this site, I'll kind of take a response. I'm gonna place in the chat the link to the town's American Legion property webpage. So you and others can kind of see what the town said about the project, current update as of December of 2023. I know I'm not staff working on it, but I'm sure that a staff member who is working on the project would be happy to answer any clarifying questions about it.
In other words, you're dismissing what I want to know from, I mean, it sounds like the Taft Mills Group thinks that what's going to go on the Legion property is kind of even with their development. And that is not our understanding.
It is not my intention to dismiss your question. I'm sorry that it came off that way. My hope is to have a conversation about the Longleaf Trace project, which is separate from and distinct from the American Legion property redevelopment.
Except that the previous question was how does connectivity play a role in the park? The quote, amazing park, which it will, that's Michael Parker's former council member's words. It will not be amazing. We'll be lucky if we get any.
So Diane, I will, if you don't mind, I'll comment as well, since I'm the one that said it ran along the backside. If you look at the frontage along Legion Road, that is that portion of the town-owned parcel, it's about double the amount of frontage that this particular parcel that we're talking about tonight has.
Yeah.
And so we have, we looked at a site plan when the town had an RFQ for the Legion Road affordable housing, the town-owned parcel. And I can tell you that based on our architect's rendering and their rough guesstimation of where the property lines would be based on intel from the RFQ, it does line up with the very rear of our property, of our property that we're talking about tonight, within, I don't know, 20 feet. Maybe it's a little bit longer, but when we scale it, it does in fact kind of line up with our particular property. I know that that doesn't answer your question about it being a great park, but I can tell you that when you look at an aerial, like we can see aerials, there's a lot of space in front of the building that exists there, in between the building and where the back of the affordable housing parcel exists. So unrelated to what we're talking about here tonight, but hopefully that gives you some insight. And you know, all the responses that were submitted, DHICs and others, you know, I'm assuming are available if you request it from staff. But generally speaking, I can tell you that you know, my understanding and my review of the information provided by the town is it is pretty much in line with the rear of the property that we're proposing.
So what you're saying is the rear of your property is somewhere in the middle of the, if you draw it over towards the east, that property line, that sounds to me like it kind of cuts through the middle of the pond. That's the space that is from the, if you're talking about the frontage on Legion Road for the DHIC project, that has to stop at the pond the way it is now.
Yes, that is the present condition of the site. As far as the pond, I will, you know, that's not on our property that we're talking about tonight. And so I don't know what the town's ultimate plan for that pond is. So I'll have to defer to staff on that particular question. But I do know that what I said earlier is consistent with what our understanding is regarding, you know, size and scale of the adjacent parcel that's town owned.
Okay, thank you. But it is important to know what's going to happen to that pond, because right now that pond affects the meadows. It would affect your property as well if that dam isn't fixed. And the plan is to do something to the dam. Now, the town hasn't made it clear exactly what they're going to do, but that would impact your property.
Yes,
Anyway.
yeah, absolutely. You're right. You're correct. And it actually, the stream that the pond, the outflow of the pond flows through the stream that runs through the rear of our property that we are not disturbing. So, our goal is to, two of our engineers are on tonight, but we'll work closely with them. They will work closely with the town of Chapel Hill to make sure any necessary improvements are made within our site that, would address any concerns that come from our site. But we would also have to, we have an interest in working with the town of Chapel Hill to determine what impacts the adjacent parcel has on our site in the future as well. Because if we, as I said earlier, we most likely will be building this development earlier than the development on the town-owned parcel, and so we'll effectively be neighbors of that property. And so we will, want to maintain regular communication with town staff to make sure that everything is meeting the objectives of our site and folks further downstream from us.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I see that Peter he probably has more knowledge than I do about what's going to happen. So I'll thank you for speaking.
Thank you, Diane. So I don't see any other attendees' hands raised. So Peter, do you have another question?
Yes, a question for Mr. Mills. In reading the fine print, I squinted, but I got it. You're proposing a privacy fence between the development and the 8 households in Turnberry. Have you considered a privacy fence for the 56 households in the Meadows?
We didn't when we looked at the plan, because the challenge with constructing a privacy fence in that particular area is we'd have to go into the area that we do not want to disturb. Because along the rear of the property where those homes touch bases in the 1/3 of the property parcel that we are trying to avoid providing any disruption. We found ourselves in situations before where we were asked by neighbors to do that in similar scenarios, and we've agreed to it. And then when you get down to installing the fence, if you're installing it in a straight line, a lot of times that means taking out trees to accommodate that or to keep it within the property lines. And in here, we're squeezing against that rear property line and a 50-foot setback from the stream. And so in my mind, if I were a homeowner, and I know I'm not, but I would prefer to have the natural wooded area more so than having trees come down to accommodate a privacy fence. But we do not anticipate doing that. And I will take a note down that you mentioned that for consideration. We'll discuss it. But I believe that the impact on cutting trees down to accommodate the installation of that fence would be, in my opinion, more detrimental than providing the fence.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. So I don't see any other hands raised. We have about 7 minutes until the end of our time. So I think with that, we can give folks just one more call for questions. All right, thank you all very much for attending this public information meeting. It has been recorded and we can make it available on request. Sometimes if it's of particular interest, we can add it to the project webpage. I hope you all have a good rest of your night.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.